My name is Elizabeth. I'm 27. And if I could summarize my family in one sentence, it would be, appearance is the only asset that matters. That probably sounds dramatic. I know. But if you've ever had a mother who orchestrates family photos, like a military operation, or a sister whose self-worth is measured in social media engagement, you'd get it. My family isn't cruel. Not really. They're just curated, polished surfaces, strategic conversations, and a deep, abiding terror of what the neighbors might think. I've always been the quiet variable in their equation, the one they couldn't quite solve for. While my sister Jessica was collecting pageant crowns, I was collecting datasets. I got a full scholarship for data science and spent the next few years building something in the quiet of my apartment. A project I never talked about because, honestly, I didn't think they'd understand it. And I was pretty sure I'd fail anyway. That's imposter syndrome for you. It's the little voice that whispers you're a fraud. Even when you're holding a winning lottery ticket. And my ticket had just come in. The deal closed last Tuesday. A $5.8 million acquisition of my company. My software. My algorithm. A number so large it felt like a typo. I stared at the confirmation email. Not with triumph, but with a quiet, hollow dread. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel earned. It felt like a clerical error I was about to be exposed for. While I was wrestling with this, my family was obsessing over a different kind of asset, Ryan Davenport. Jessica's new fiancé. He was a venture capitalist. Or so, he said. Tall. Charismatic. With a smile so perfect, it looked like it was focus grouped. My family was mesmerized. My mother, Jennifer, talked about him in the same hushed, reverent tones she used for old money and club memberships. His saw driven. She'd say, he understands how the world works. My father, Michael, a man whose spine was replaced with a polite shrug years ago, would just nod and agree. Ryan's success was loud. Tangible. He wore expensive suits and told stories about multi-million-dollar deals. My success was quiet. Abstract. Hidden behind lines of code. It didn't make for a good story at a dinner party. So as far as they were concerned, it didn't exist. I was still just quiet little Elizabeth. The smart girl who was finding her way. I was fine with that. I preferred to be underestimated. It was safer. But then my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Family dinner. Oak Creek Country Club. Sunday at 7. Be there. Ryan has a special announcement. No please. No hope you can make it. Just a summons. An obligation. My role was to show up, be the quiet background character, and applaud on cue. A part of me wanted to say no. To just stay in my quiet, successful world. But another part, the part that still foolishly craved their approval, I knew I had to go. I had to see the performance up close. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and the air is so thick with expectation, it feels hard to breathe. That was the dining room at the Oak Creek Country Club. Crystal glasses gleamed under soft lighting. The clink of silverware was hushed and polite. It was a perfect stage for a perfect family. And I was late. Just by 10 minutes. But enough to disrupt the opening scene. My mother greeted me with a smile so tight, it looked painful. Elizabeth. Darling. We were just about to order. No hug. Just a swift appraisal of my simple black dress. A look that said it was adequate. But barely. Everyone else was already seated. My father. Sipping a scotch. Jessica. Looking radiant and smug. And Ryan. Lounging in his chair like he owned the place. Which, in a way, it did. He owned their attention completely. He flashed that brilliant smile. There she is. The elusive coder. Glad you could join us in the real world for a night. Jessica giggled. Be nice. Rye. But she didn't mean it. The first half of dinner was a masterclass in Ryan's charm. He told a story about closing a deal in Tokyo. Another about yachting with a client. My parents were captivated. He was the son they always wanted. Ambitious. Confident. And, most importantly, visible. Then, he turned to me. So, Elizabeth, your mom tells me you're still doing that data thing. Any big breakthroughs in your spreadsheets lately? I felt the familiar heat rise in my cheeks. It's a bit more complex than spreadsheets. He smirked, taking a sip of his wine. Of course. I'm just saying. You're a smart woman. Ever think about applying all that brain power to something with a little more impact? Real-world finance. The things that actually move markets. Before I could formulate a response that was both polite and devastatingly sharp, my mother jumped in. Ryan, she's perfectly happy with her projects. It sounded like a defense, but it was a dismissal. The subtext was clear. Let's not talk about Elizabeth's little hobbies. They're not important. Jessica added. She's always been more of an academic. We can't all be closers like you. Ryan. The word hung in the air. Closers? As if life were a sales competition and I'd already lost. I looked at my mother, hoping for a flicker of support. Instead, I got the look. A slight narrowing of her eyes. A faint, almost imperceptible shake of her head. It was a look I knew better than my own reflection. It meant, don't make a scene. The family mantra. Do not disrupt the illusion of the perfect, happy family. Do not introduce messy things like truth or real feelings. I leaned back, my resolve hardening into a cold, clear crystal. You're right, I said, my voice quiet, but steady. I'm not a closer. The conversation moved on, but I stayed behind. I watched them. I listened. I wasn't just their daughter or sister anymore. I was a data scientist. And they were the most fascinating, infuriating dataset I had ever encountered. And I was beginning to see a pattern in the noise. A flaw in Ryan's perfect algorithm. I drove home from that dinner with a ringing in my ears. It was the sound of silence, the silence of my family as I was patronized. The silence of my own voice, when I was told not to make a scene. For the next few days, that silence continued. No calls. No texts. It was as if the dinner, and my brief, failed attempt at defending myself, had been neatly edited out of the family narrative. I half expected it. In my family, anything unpleasant is simply ignored until it ceases to exist. I tried to focus on work, on the final transition details of the company sale. It was my world. A world of logic and facts. A welcome escape from the murky, unspoken rules of my family. But I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The gut instinct that Ryan's performance was just that. A performance. A week later, my phone rang. It was Jessica. Her voice, an octave higher than usual, practically vibrating with excitement. Liz, you are not going to believe it. I knew what it was before she said it. It was the special announcement from the dinner. He proposed, she squealed. Ryan proposed. We're getting engaged, I murmured the expected. Congratulations. My voice sounding flat and distant, even to my own ears. She didn't notice. She was too caught up in the whirlwind. And the best part? She continued. Breathless. We're not waiting. We found the most perfect vineyard in the hill country. We're doing it in 2 months. Can you believe it? 2 months. 2 months. The words landed like a punch. A long engagement would allow time for scrutiny, for cracks to appear in the facade. A short engagement was a power move. It was an emotional sprint, designed to sweep everyone up in the excitement before anyone had a chance to ask hard questions. My mother, of course, was ecstatic. A lavish, rushed wedding was the ultimate validation. It was proof of success, of desirability, a flawless production she could direct. I could already picture her, clipboard in hand, terrorizing florists. A few days later, it arrived. A thick, cream-colored envelope with my name written in perfect, looping calligraphy. Inside, the formal invitation. Jennifer and Michael Vance request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter Jessica to Ryan Davenport. Below that, the date, printed in gold foil. It stared up at me from the heavy cardstock. It wasn't just a date. It was a deadline, a ticking clock. In 60 days, Ryan Davenport would be a legal member of my family. My period of quiet observation was over. The time for passive data collection had passed. I placed the invitation on my desk. A silent declaration of war. He had escalated. Now, it was my turn. The quiet variable was about to go live. I don't panic. My brain isn't wired for it. When faced with a complex problem, I don't get emotional. I get methodical. And Ryan Davenport was the most complex, high-stakes problem I had ever faced. My first step was to build a team. I couldn't do this alone. Surrounded by the family's echo chamber, I needed outside perspectives. I needed experts. My first call was to Daniel. He's a digital forensics analyst. I'd contracted with a few times. He's quiet, meticulous, and lives for the thrill of finding a digital needle in a haystack of deception. I met him at a sterile coffee shop downtown. I need a full workup on someone, I said, sliding a folder with Ryan's name across the table. Financials, professional history, associations, everything. And it needs to be completely off the books. Daniel didn't ask why. He just nodded, took the folder, and said, "Give me a week." My second call was to Emily. She's been my best friend since college. Now, a corporate lawyer with a mind like a steel trap. We met at my apartment that night. Surrounded by takeout containers and the glow of my laptop, I laid out everything: the dinner, the condescension, the rushed engagement, my gut feeling that it was all wrong. "So, you want me to find a legal reason to stop the wedding?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "No," I said. "I want to be prepared for what happens when the truth comes out. I need to know our options." She leaned back, studying my face. "What is it with your family? Liz, why are they so desperate for this guy to be the one?" And that's when I told her. I told her about the wound that my family never talks about. The origin story of my mother's obsession. When I was 8, my dad's construction business went bankrupt. It wasn't just a financial loss, it was a social death. We went from a big house in the nice neighborhood to a cramped rental. My parents' friends disappeared. My mother endured the pitying looks at the grocery store, the whispers at school events. The shame of that failure broke something in her. It was then that she decided that the appearance of success was the only armor that could protect her from ever feeling that humiliation again. Jessica learned that lesson well. I didn't. "She's not just trying to marry off her daughter," I explained, the words feeling heavy and sad. "She's trying to fix the past. Ryan isn't just a fiancé, he's a status symbol. He's proof that we made it back, that we're not failures." Emily was quiet for a long moment. "Wow," she said softly. "That doesn't excuse it. But it explains a lot. Understanding my mother's fear didn't make her actions right. But it reframed the narrative. She wasn't just a villain in my story. She was a tragic character in her own. Haunted by ghosts I could only guess at. But her tragedy was about to become my family's. And I was the only one who could see it coming. The first report from Daniel came a week later. It was a password-protected file with a simple subject line: "Initial findings." I opened it with Emily on a video call, my heart pounding a steady, nervous rhythm against my ribs. The surface-level information was clean, just as I expected. Ryan had a polished digital footprint. But Daniel was better than that. He had dug deeper, into archived web pages, deleted social media profiles, and obscure public records. The first red flag was a series of small businesses Ryan had started in his early 20s. All of them failed, and all of them were dissolved, leaving a trail of small debts and angry partners. Not criminal, but it showed a pattern of over-promising and under-delivering. Then Daniel found the shell corporations, 3 of them, registered in states with lax reporting laws, all linked to the same post office box. Money moved between them in a confusing, circular pattern. "He's hiding something," Emily said, her lawyer brain kicking into high gear. "This isn't standard investment strategy. This is intentional obfuscation." The real breakthrough came 4 days later. Daniel called me, his voice stripped of its usual calm. "Elizabeth, I found it. It's a Ponzi scheme. A small one. But it's definitely a Ponzi." He walked me through it. Ryan had created a fake investment group. Something with a flashy, tech-sounding name. He pitched it to a small circle of investors, promising impossibly high returns based on his insider knowledge. He was using money from new investors to pay fake dividends to the early ones, creating the illusion of a profitable venture while pocketing the rest. Daniel estimated he'd taken in about $750,000. My blood ran cold. It was real. My gut feeling. The subtle red flags. The condescending attitude, it all clicked into place. He wasn't just an arrogant jerk. He was a predator. But the worst was yet to come. "I'm sending you the investor list," Daniel said, his voice grim. The file appeared in my inbox. I clicked it open, and my world tilted on its axis. I saw the names of my parents' friends from the country club. I saw the name of a former business partner of my father's. And then, at the bottom of the list, a name that made me physically sick. Aunt Carol, my mother's sister. She had been widowed a year ago, and I knew for a fact she had just received her husband's life insurance payout. He had found the most vulnerable person in our entire family, a grieving widow, and he had targeted her. He had sat at our family's table, accepted their praise, and all the while, he was robbing them. This was no longer about my bruised ego or family dynamics. This was about protecting the people I loved, even if they didn't deserve it. From the monster they had so eagerly invited in, my mission had a new name. It wasn't revenge. It was rescue. The day of the wedding was a masterpiece of denial. The hill country vineyard was bathed in the soft, golden light of a late afternoon sun. White roses and eucalyptus draped over every available surface. A string quartet played softly, as guests in pastel dresses and linen suits sipped champagne. It was the perfect picture. The exact image my mother had spent a lifetime chasing. To an outsider, it was a fairy tale. To me, it was the scene of the crime. I stood by a stone archway, watching the performance unfold. Ryan was at the center of it all. A groom in a tailored suit, shaking hands, laughing. His confidence absolute. He was about to close the biggest deal of his life. Jessica was a vision in white lace. Her smile, as bright and brittle as spun sugar. She looked happy, but I saw the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hand. She was playing the part of a lifetime. I saw my mother directing the wedding planner. Her face, a mask of triumphant control. Everything was perfect. Everything was in its place. Especially me. The ceremony was a blur of sentimental cliches and promises that were already lies. Then came the reception. The toasts began after the main course. My father gave a short, heartfelt speech. My mother followed with a long, tearful monologue about dreams coming true. The guests applauded politely. Then, as the servers began clearing the plates for dessert, I stood up and tapped my spoon against my glass. A clear, ringing sound cut through the chatter. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. My mother looked horrified. Ryan's smile tightened. "I'd like to say a few words," I said, my voice calm. And even as I walked to the microphone, I promised to be brief. I looked at my sister. "Jessica, you look stunning, and I sincerely wish you all the happiness you deserve." I then turned my gaze to Ryan. "And Ryan, I have to admit, I misused you. I thought you were just arrogant. But I've learned you are far more ambitious than I ever imagined." A nervous titter went through the crowd. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a small adapter. I walked over to the large projector that had been displaying a slideshow of the happy couple and connected my phone. The smiling faces were replaced by my screen. I opened a file. On the screen, in stark black and white, a flowchart appeared. It showed Ryan's 3 shell corporations, with arrows indicating the flow of money. "Ryan is a gifted storyteller," I continued, my voice amplified by the microphone. "One of his best stories is about an exclusive investment fund." I clicked to the next slide. A list of names appeared. He promised incredible returns. And to his first investors, Ed delivered. I clicked again. This time, it was a copy of a bank transfer from a new investor's account, directly into Ryan's personal account. And then, the final slide. The full investor list. The only problem is, the fund doesn't exist. He was paying the old investors with money from the new ones. I pointed to the screen. Like our Aunt Carol, who invested her husband's entire life insurance policy 2 months ago. A collective gasp went through the room. Aunt Carol stared, her face ashen. Ryan was frozen. His mask of charm finally shattered. Jessica looked from the screen to Ryan to me. her expression crumbling from confusion into horror. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The data spoke for itself. I was always told not to make a scene, I said, looking directly at my mother, whose perfect world was collapsing around her. But some things are more important than appearances. Truth is one of them. I set the microphone down. I didn't wait for the fallout. I turned and walked out of the reception, past the stunned faces and the wilting flowers. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt a lifetime of weight lift from my shoulders. The quiet variable had finally spoken, and in the silence that followed, for the first time, I felt truly, completely free.